if the facilities are really good, the chances of the job being completed in a timely manner are much greater. And there's always the risk, if the facilities are poor, that will the appropriate health treatment or whatever it is, will it be carried out at all, or will it be just put on the long finger and not completed at all?
Hello, I'm Kieran Lynch and welcome to OviCast, the Teagasc Sheep podcast. Each episode will bring less insights, advice and technical updates for the sheep industry. In this episode, we chat to Teagasc Sheep Specialist Damian Costello about the preliminary results from the Teagasc Labour Survey on sheep farms. We discuss some of the key findings from the latest analysis, including the age profile of farmers, levels of off-farm employment and how tasks are managed on the farm throughout the year. Damian discusses the facilities available on the farm, some of the challenges created by farm fragmentation and how these factors influence farm management and future development. We also look at the TAMS uptake, the barriers facing farmers accessing the scheme. To finish, Damian shares the findings on the future trends and what the outlook may be for sheep numbers on farms going forward. Damian, good to have you on. As our listeners will remember, we had you actually on the podcast back in 2004, I think it was in October, when you launched this survey. You're at a stage now where you're looking at some of the results. Maybe you'll give me a little bit of background to it first and we'll delve into where it's gone to since.
Yeah, thanks, Kieran. I suppose in terms of background, it's probably around 99, 2000 that we did a previous study. Our colleague Liam Connolly took a fairly in-depth look at labour on sheep farms at that time. I suppose the current study that we're looking at the minute, at the outset, I suppose we were maybe looking to capture a profile of what the Irish sheep farmers are looking like at the minute, maybe trying to get a handle on the type of infrastructure that's there on farms and maybe identify some of the gaps and that where improvements could be made. And thirdly, I suppose maybe to identify areas where farmers need to be supported in order to improve the labour efficiency on their farm, I suppose.
It's an important piece of work because it captures a picture of where we're at the moment, and it does, as you indicate there, identify some of them issues. Look, and I'm sure some of our listeners may have completed this, Damian, but just maybe in terms of numbers of farmers completed it, and give us a profile of who filled the survey.
Yeah, so we ended up with 446 responses. There was a small number of surveys that weren't usable. A lot of them were completed online. As you say, some of the listeners may have completed them, the Survey Monkey link, but also I suppose there were went out, paper versions were circulated through our sheep discussion groups and maybe at public events and conferences and so on. And thanks to the Teagasc Advisor Network for helping in getting them completed that way. So basically, from August 2024 up to June 2025, the survey was open, and we'd like to think that we got a good representation of the Irish sheep industry. All counties were well represented, and a good spread across the bigger sheep counties, I suppose. Well represented across all age categories, from the under 35s to the over 65s. There was a good representation across all age categories. Again, you might sort of say, was it all the bigger farms that completed it? Yes, I suppose the average flock size that completed the survey was slightly higher than the national average, but at the same time, there was almost half the respondents were people that had less than 100 ewes. So it was very typical, I suppose, in terms of flock size as well. With a good spread between hill and lowland systems, and also we had different, I suppose, enterprises on farms. We had about 37% that were sheep-only farms, and the remainder had another enterprise running alongside their sheep.
So fairly good representative picture of what we're looking at in the industry. Nice breakdown in age and location.
Yeah, we'd like to think that we got a good representative of the industry. Yeah,
and good numbers in it as well. So look, it's a good strong bit of data here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the data in terms of what some of the key findings from the study were. And I suppose maybe we start with the first one, Damian. Given the part-time nature of dry stock farming, how did that come out in your study, and what were the kind of couple of key trends you started to see in it?
Yeah, I mean, we asked people to to state if they were working off farm, and if they were, was it full time or that. So uh, about 45% of people stated that they were working full time off farm, so that your kind of traditional 5 day week. And there was a further 16% that were working off farm as well, but maybe kind of between 1 and 4 days they were working, you could say, a shorter week, or they were working part time off farm, I suppose. Um, the interesting thing, I suppose, Kieran, was that when you looked at the off farm employment by age category, we basically broke the age category of the respondents into four categories. So we had under 35s, 35, age 35 to 49, age 50 to 65, and over 65. When you looked at the off-farm employment situation under those four age categories, the under 35s, and maybe it's not surprising, maybe we can know this already, but just to see, 84% of the under 35s were working off-farm. Whereas if you looked at the older age categories in the over 65s, only 24% were working off farm. So maybe some of these people have worked off farm in the past, and they're retired now from their off farm job. But the trend, I suppose, clearly indicates, I suppose, that the sheep farmer of the future is going to be predominantly part time, and making it all the more important that the sheep enterprise can be ran in a very labour efficient way.
And like Damon, that's a fairly linear trend. I've seen the data presented, like even go up the other categories. As the age increases, the more full-time farmers, obviously the younger cohort that is coming through are more dependent on that off-farm job as well. So it does have that implication, as you indicated there, for how we go about it. I suppose, Damon, that probably also has an implication for how they use some of the time away from work as well on the farm, doing jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose we asked a couple of questions, I suppose, around the whole area of part-time farming, in terms of when they get to do their farm work, and the challenges, I suppose, that presents. Um, Interestingly, I suppose 70% of people, when we asked when did they complete most of their sheep work or their routine sheep tasks, 70% said they completed most of them on a Saturday. And again, that's probably not surprising. Lots of people that work off farm are on the Monday to Friday job, but it's probably also a reflection, maybe if they require assistance, that their family members or that may be available to help at the weekend or that. Another one that was quite a startling figure, I think, that we asked people, do they take time off or annual leave from their off-farm job in order to complete the farm work? And we asked them to say how many days in the year they would estimate that would be. It turned out at an average of around 17 days, and there was quite a broad range in that, actually. But that was the average figure, 17 days. And I remember being quite startled when I seen that figure. But then from chatting to a few farmers, and that when you count it, a lot of people take maybe a couple of weeks off at lambing time, and that it's quite easy to build up the 16, 17 days. So, but maybe it's something it's just something, I suppose, maybe that's a challenge, I suppose, and that from that point of view. We also asked them then, I suppose, maybe do they, in terms of getting a bit of help or assistance to complete the work. It would appear to be an industry, again, maybe traditionally, there wouldn't have been a lot of paid labour on the farm, except for maybe very larger flocks. And again, only 6% indicated that they hire in kind of casual labour at busy times, I suppose. The vast majority of people, 62%, rely on family members for help, and 32% say that most of the sheep work is done on their own. So I suppose for those 32%, having things in order and having things right maybe are all the more important for them. But yeah, it's just an interesting one.
Well, it's a good insight to the way the work's actually being done as well, and the fact that 70% is completed on a Saturday, that would include a lot of full-time sheep farmers as well, and it highlights maybe the need for the help there. Probably
Yeah.
leads us into the next aspect of one of the key parts you looked at, was the facilities on the farm, because this is obviously leading into the labour element in a big way on it, particularly in the months we're in at the moment. Look, you asked a lot of questions around this, and you've kind of summarised some of them, Damien. Maybe take us through that. What did you look at, and what did you find?
The first thing was we kind of asked people to indicate if they had a designated sheep handling unit, yes or no. Now we did specify that it was specifically for sheep, that it wasn't that you were using the cattle facilities for sheep as well. And 23% said they didn't have a designated sheep handling unit. Um, so again, that's almost a quarter of people that didn't have a specific handling unit for sheep, either fixed or mobile. I suppose we throw out the question then, did they feel that, from a labour point of view, if they improve their handling facilities, would it reduce the workload on the farm? And 85% said yes, definitely it would reduce the workload. Um, so we asked them then maybe to sort of, if you like, a wish list, or what sort of features they would be thinking of, or if they had a choice, or if suppose if money was no object or whatever, that what were the type of features they would add to their handling facilities. Um, I suppose some of the more modern type, automated systems and clamp systems were on the wish list, but by about 25% of people that responded to this. And again, things like, improving their handling race, or providing themselves with a good mobile handling unit. Those were the type of things people were saying. And we asked people as well then maybe to rank what they felt were the big three priorities, or what were the main priorities for labour saving infrastructure on the farm. And the three that came out on top really were sheep handling facilities, sheep fencing, and sheep housing. And I think they were, from memory, they were closely followed by a well-trained sheepdog, which again is still very important from a labour point of view. It's an important feature. But the top three were the handling, the fencing, and the housing.
And like in fairness to them, you can see what they would fall into in the big time requirements. Although the good dog is often as good as two people with you, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it does highlight. But some stark figures there in terms of that dedicated unit and what facilities were available. You mentioned mobile units there. I suppose the other thing characteristic of a lot of dry stock farms is fragmentation. It was a question you asked as well. How did that play out?
Yeah, and again, I suppose given the areas of the country that sheep are traditionally farmed, there is quite fragmented farms. Um, I think that the average number of blocks per farm was something over three, around 3.2. The other way we asked the question, I suppose, was, do you require a trailer to transport sheep between your land blocks? And 68% said yes, they require a trailer transport. But um, interestingly, then when we were asking people if they had a dedicated sheep handling facility, we also asked them to specify what type they had. So we gave them the options of fixed, mobile, or both. Uh, and despite the fact that 68% of the farms need to be moving sheep between blocks, 64% of the handling facilities are fixed only. They just have a fixed handling facility. So um, maybe that's probably on, we'll say, the main block of the main farm block, or the home block, or whatever. Uh, but I suppose the question is, how are they managing on the out blocks? Uh, there was 13% of people said they had a fixed unit, but they also had a mobile unit, and the remaining 23% then said they had a mobile unit only, but they didn't have a fixed unit. So it kind of throws up the type of questions, Kieran, like, are people, are the 64% that just have a fixed unit, are they loading sheep up on a trailer to carry them to where the fixed unit is located? And that would certainly be uh, a big drain on time. The other thing is, are they just making do with very makeshift or poor facilities on the outblocks while there are sheep there? So
And I,
it is a challenge. Yeah.
and look, you touched on that. It has implications on time, maybe the labour input in doing those jobs, and probably, Damien, the one thing we don't see in some of these cases, implications on the performance of stock if jobs are being left off because of it as well.
Well, this is the thing, and we've often said that about good handling facilities. Where the facilities are good and that look, there's a certain amount of effort involved, but if the facilities are really good, the chances of the job being completed in a timely manner are much greater. And there's always the risk if the facilities are poor that will the appropriate health treatment or whatever it is, will it be carried out at all, or will it be just put on the long finger and not completed at all,
Look, in terms of the actual facilities, you did delve into that a bit more as well. Like, what is present on the farms? Probably it's something like it was one of the stark figures I think came out. One of the original studies that Liam Connolly did was some of the equipment that wasn't present. You looked at that in a bit more detail in this one as well.
Yeah, I suppose we asked people, I suppose, kind of from a list of nearly covering all the different components that you might have in a sheep handling facility, and we asked people to identify uh, what they had on their farms, and I suppose the, there's some of them scoring really well, as in the likes of a weigh scales, 88%, a collecting pen. You'd assume most people have at least a collecting pen, 87%. We asked them, did they have any type of a foot bath, whether it was a batch foot bath or just a few trays in a race. Again, maybe about three-quarters of people did have a foot bath. But as you come down along, 69% of people said they had a handling race, but only 52% said they had a sorting gate at the front of the race where you could, this time of the year, people will be thinking of weaning lambs. If you ran the ewes and lambs through a two-way sorting gate, you could very easily uh, separate the lambs without actually catching any sheep at all. But for the 50% that don't have a sorting gate, you'd have to assume that they are manually catching each sheep and putting them the other side of a gate when they need to do any separating of lambs or, say, thin ewes or something like that. So that was an interesting one. But uh, we kind of then sort of, if we looked at those five items, the collecting pen, the foot bath, the weigh scales of any sort, the handling race with the sorting gate. We put those five items as kind of the minimum requirement for a handling facility, the kind of must-haves, we'll say. Uh, and we looked at what percentage of the respondents had all five of these components, and surprisingly, only a third of people indicated that all five of these components were present on their farm. So look at there's lots of room for improvement, I suppose, and we're not necessarily talking about breaking the bank with investments. Um, these are something that people could have a look at, and adding a race and a sorting gate to their existing facilities is not going to be a massive investment. Um, the other thing I
No,
suppose we noted from that, Ken, was just that we'll say that the higher end systems were very rare really on Irish farms, the automated type and the more expensive system. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
but to take a point there, David, like the very basics, the very, very basics, the race, the sorting gate, other farms wouldn't, they're not present on that. That isn't the higher price stuff we're talking about here.
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, it's an interesting one. Look, so the footpath is another thing is probably in focus for a lot of work we're doing at the moment as well. You did just look at that again in terms of what was present on the farms and the type of footpath.
Yeah. Again, just over three-quarters of people said they use a footbath, and um, that would kind of tie in with our colleague Jake Delaney. Looked at the use of footbaths in his work on lameness. Um, the type of footbath, the majority of footbaths reported, almost 70% of them were included in the race, so they could be built into the race, or there could be the plastic trays. Um, I suppose we would have always felt that a batch footbath would be um, a better option from the point of view of getting through the work and getting through the footbathing in a more time efficient fashion. Um, but there was 17% had an unroofed batch footpath, and 9% had a roofed batch footpath, which again is what we recommend. But it's only 9% of people have that. If there's a cover roof over it, and you're using something like zinc sulfate as your footpath solution, it can be used multiple times. Because the solution has not been diluted by rainwater. So we asked people then, I suppose, to give us an idea on average how many ewes fit in the footpath at one time. Um, the average number of ewes that people reported was that 7 ewes at a time fit. I think I said at the start, 168 was the average flock size that were completed the service. So, I mean, we heard from Jake also at the conference that he was recommending up to 15 minutes of contact time inside in the footpath. So if you have to put 7 ewes in for 15 minutes, you'd have to fill your footpath 20 times to get through 140 ewes. So that's a few more fills if you're going for the 168 average. So it's a really slow throughput, and probably you'd have to assume what will happen would be that there'll be far shorter contact time, less effective foot bedding. And the question that you posed there earlier on, Kieran, will it be done at all, or will it just skip? And kind of people say, they seem okay. It's going to take too long to put back the flock. So it's like all facilities. I think if the facilities are good enough, these tasks will be not just completed in a timely fashion, but it's far easier to get around to these jobs, and they're not being put off and maybe postponed completely if it's not possible to do them in a timely manner. Like.
But to look at that one in particular, like slightly under spec given the size of the flock you've talked about, I'm sure there's big variation there, Damon, in the
well,
number
again, a huge range.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, a huge range. Yeah, a
but
huge range.
The average is telling us that trend that's probably not spec'd well enough for the size of flocks we're working with, and that obviously is implications either for performance or time spent doing it. So,
yeah,
definitely a challenge. Look, we know cost is one of the barriers for investing in facilities. The TAMS grant has been there for the last number of years, doing in different tranches, and some of this equipment is funded under. You did throw the question around TAMS funding. What was the survey data telling you?
Yeah, like as you said, I mean the funding has been there since 2008. It's always been at the 40% rate for the general. There was 60% available for other categories such as the young trained farmer, or even. But in more recent ones, there's up to 60. There's 60% funding under the Farm Safety Capital Investment Scheme and under TAMS 3 for mobile and fixed sheep handling facilities. We threw the question to people, I suppose. Bearing in mind that people said that handling, fencing, and housing were the big three in terms of labour saving infrastructure. But yet, when we asked them, did they apply for TAMS funding? Only 40% said they had available at any time for anything. So we kind of tried to tease out a little bit as to why people weren't applying. And again, look at among the areas that were identified, people were saying that the application procedure, people felt that the reference costs weren't lining up too well with the actual costs. And then look at it, as you said, that there is an overall investment cost to any of these things. Yes, if you're getting your TAMS funding back, it takes it certainly is a big help. But that said, people have to come up with the money first, purchase the equipment or put in their unit or do their fencing or whatever they're doing, and claim your grant back after that. But I just thought it was a relatively low uptake given the level of grant funding that has been available over the years.
Well, particularly in the context of what we discussed earlier in terms of the equipment that's needed on those farms and the acknowledgement or the wish list that's there for farmers.
Yeah. Now, as you'd expect, I suppose, Kieran, the larger flocks were twice as likely to apply compared to the smaller flocks. So maybe they're, obviously the labour is maybe they're committing to the sheep enterprise into the future, and the the highest uptake by age seemed to be in the kind of the 35 to 49. And again, part-time farmers were maybe slightly more inclined to apply for TAMS. So look at they're maybe more focused on trying to save time, I suppose, as well, given that they're working on farm.
No, it's an interesting insight to it, and it's probably something that will be looked in a bit more detail. Um, if we maybe stand back for a moment and look at the industry over the last number of years, the change in flock size in numbers and the reduction in Damien is something that has happened over the last couple of years, something we've discussed previously. You did ask questions around in terms of, the intention going forward. What did respondents tell you?
Yeah, I mean, we asked people maybe to indicate if they were inclined or intending to, or maybe had done already, reduce sheep numbers. I suppose there was about 38% of people said they have reduced the numbers, or they're planning to reduce, or they have already reduced sheep numbers. And as a follow-on from that, we asked people to indicate maybe why why had they been reducing, um, and not surprisingly, maybe labour was one of the top answers, I suppose, or one of the most common answers. 39% of people said of those that said they were planning to reduce, I suppose 39% said it was because of labour. Um, Other reasons included profitability was about 34%, and in the lower end, then people were talking about their their off farm their off farm job or their lifestyle, and there was a number of people that said that the successor or their potential successor wasn't interested in sheep. Um, but labour was the biggest one. We also maybe if we look at the, the the inclination, I suppose, to reduce numbers by age, as you'd expect, the farmers that were over 50 were more likely to be considering reducing than the younger farmers. And the other thing we looked at then was by flock size. And again, the larger flocks, well, in particular, the kind of flocks kind of between 150 and 300 Joes, were the most likely to be considering reducing, and the smaller flocks, maybe from up to 50 ewes, were less likely to be considering reducing. So, look at again, it's another challenge, and as we mentioned at the start, I suppose that the fact that the majority of farmers are part time and do all off-farm jobs, I suppose, lend themselves to part-time farming. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But um, there's certainly a number of challenges around that whole
There is,
area
but
of numbers.
it's been an interesting insight in terms of where those challenges are, and maybe where the focus of some of the investment or efforts on the farm have been as well, Damien. But you've highlighted, maybe to just capture again, what do you think the couple of standout challenges you've identified from it are? And look, with each of those challenges, there is opportunities there to address them, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, yeah. I suppose look at the part the fact that the majority of sheep farmers of the future, and even now, a lot of them are part-time. So, that's maybe a challenge in itself. But as you say, there's also an opportunity on the other hand uh, to get maybe to improve a little bit on the infrastructure in terms of being more efficient with time. Um, in terms of the handling facilities, I think there's huge opportunities to improve there. As I say, only 1 in 3 farms could report that they had the 5 basic handling components: the collection, the collection pen, the weigh scales, the race, the separate, the sorting gate, and the foot bath. So they in anyone's language, they, as you say earlier, would be the very basics that you think you would need So only 1 in 3 people were able to say that they had those in place. Again, fragmented farms is a challenge. There can be a lot of time spent with trailering sheep from place to place. And the follow-on to that, I suppose, is how do you manage? Probably not realistic to have a handing unit in every block of ground, but particularly smaller blocks. But maybe a good mobile unit and maybe even some bit of an area, a footpath, for example, in the main blocks where sheep would be grazed, and combining that with a mobile unit. Again, I suppose there's opportunities for people there, as I say, with the TAMS. The uptake has been relatively low, but there certainly there's opportunities there. So. We've been working closely for a number of years with farmers and a number of different farms on the Better Farm program, and they're constantly showing that the two can be combined: an off-farm job with a really labour efficient and profitable sheep enterprise. But they've been constantly planning and investing and putting the right infrastructure in place, and it may not happen overnight, but it's something that you can develop a plan for and work towards, I suppose.
Look, I suppose, Damian, it's been an interesting snapshot of where we're at the moment in the industry, highlighting those challenges. I know it's not your definitive analysis, there's more detail in the study and highlight some of the maybe other aspects we need to focus more on, but it's been a very useful process. I suppose only the start of it really from now.
Yeah, look, as I said, to acknowledge my colleague Norrie McHugh, who's working closely with me on this. We're hoping to have a full report. As I say, what we're talking about, or we've spoken about today, are very much kind of the interim findings, but we're putting together a full report and hoping to have that available in the near future.
If you'll maybe just stand back on something I know you're working on a regular basis, but from your looking at it, what would your couple of key takeaway messages be for farmers out there?
The glaring one, I suppose, is in terms of facilities and infrastructure. So, I mean, taking stock in particular of what handling facilities, even for people to take the five components of handling unit that we mentioned there, and see can you tick off all 5. Even at that, I suppose, taking stock, I suppose, of what's there, looking at your different land blocks and how you're fixed, and maybe talking to your advisor or that, and having about developing a plan for labour saving investments. There's no kind of a plan that fits all. I suppose it's individual to each farm. Again, look at, as I say, particularly everyone's time is valuable, I suppose, but in particular, if people are working off farm, there's definitely opportunities there to improve the efficiency of getting their routine tests done. And look at, as I say, from a Teagasc point of view, there's certainly a need for advice and support and education in terms of helping farmers to become more labour efficient, I suppose.
Damian, look, really appreciate you coming on and going through that with us. I think there's probably other aspects of it we'll have you back on to discuss in more detail after, because there is more detail there in that study. But a very useful piece of work, and look, thanks for sharing that with us today.
Okay, thanks, Kieran.
We'll leave it there for this episode. Thank Damian again for coming on, so we'll certainly get him back at a later stage, maybe discuss some of the aspects of that in more detail. I have included a link in the show notes to a copy of his presentation available on the Teagasc website, where you get more detail about the different aspects we discussed. That's it for me. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.